your private data, Facebook, Apple, Google, Twitter, and more. But frankly, you agreed. Harvesting data, and the question is, are you the crop? The Facebook controversy and the real reason that big tech is under fire and why those issues support your gold ownership. I'm Lynette Zang, Chief Market Analyst here at ITM Trading, a full-service physical precious metals brokerage house specializing in gold and silver, and really specializing in helping individuals develop a strategy that actually supports their goals. And as you can tell, we're keen on education. So I wanted to start out today, and remember, I just put this together 2 days ago. So at that point, what I was watching happen in the Dow, and actually a number of the other indexes as well, is a wedge formation, which looks like a piece of cheese, really, or because you've got a series of lower highs and a series of lower lows. Inside of a normal technical market, if the stock market, if the Dow had closed today above this trend line that you're seeing there, then the next most likely outcome would be that it would continue to go up. But instead of that, actually, I just pulled this just before we're going on. We've had a huge breakdown, huge. So the most likely next outcome is for the stock market to continue to go down. Now, I have to tell you that I really didn't think at the beginning of this thing in February that this was going to be the last hurrah. I mean, after all, we've got the change in the tax laws. We've got all that repatriation money flooding back. So what really is happening with these markets, it's a horrible breakdown. And I would not bet that this wasn't the big one. Time is going to tell us, but I'm going to tell you, if you're sitting in the markets, you either need to get out or you need to make yourself become protected. Because what all of the shenanigans has been since 2008 with the central banks supporting the markets, all of these heavy-duty corporate buybacks, is really about risk transfer from the few, from those private corporations, from the insiders, to the many, to the public. What you're looking at here is who's been buying the stocks. So of course, this big line going up are all of those stock buybacks that we've been talking about ad nauseum. And as you've been watching, and especially in technology, but actually all of the sectors have been very heavy sellers. They know that we are overstretched, but they keep the public blind. And so the other big buyers are mutual funds and ETFs, because people don't realize that what they're really buying, they don't realize what they're buying. Now, it's not the individual, you can see that here, that's buying, but every time you make a deposit to your 401k or you fund your IRA, what are you buying inside of that? Wall Street products, probably, but the mutual funds and the ETFs. And keep in mind, too, not only are these things loaded with what was previously the most expensive stock market in history, we can see that reversing now, but it's also got a lot of those big derivative bets. Because remember, derivatives are based on the price action of the underlying. They're just big bets. It doesn't matter whether you understand them or you don't understand. The guys that created them don't understand them. But their behavior is based upon the price action of this behavior. Stocks, bonds, real estate, all of these other derivatives. So it's not the stock market plummeting that's going to bother me or probably even explode this whole thing. It's going to be a derivative bet gone bad that is going to be the most likely thing to trigger this next collapse. I don't know. I don't like this action. I'm just telling you, I don't like this action. Okay? Well, you know something else that I don't really like? Okay, so Facebook and all of this controversy around them selling your data. I mean, honestly, who reads what you have to agree to before you can use a site? Nobody reads it. And they know that if they make it really long and complicated, and they could make it really short and clear and crystal, if you use the site, we are going to sell your data. Because frankly, our data is the new cash crop. Keep this in mind, okay? So a whistleblower came out to talk about something that happened, or started to happen anyway, in 2014, okay? And what he said and what they found is that there was an app that was created, and people that signed, it was a personality app, and people that signed up for it, 270,000 people signed up for it. But the way that Facebook is structured, that they had actually access to all of their friends as well. And so 50 million records, data, individuals' records were harvested. I like that. You're a cash crop. So 270,000 people downloaded that app, and then they were able to pull all of the information from everybody else, a lot more people. Well, coming on the heels of Equifax, you know, you guys, and I'm going to come back to that in just a second, but can you not get that if you hold everything online, that it is vulnerable, that you are giving up your rights? Just like if you hold all of your wealth in a brokerage account, you become a beneficial owner. You are no longer the legal owner. Well, once you use this site, then basically you have given them the right to use all of your information. Okay, you might say, well, that's not so bad, and we'll come back to that in a second as well. But let's take a look at what happened to the Facebook stock. Now, I did not pull it up today. It's my understanding that it's gone down substantially again today. However, you can see this straight resistance line. See how the stock went up and hit and bounced down, up and hit and bounced, right? So that too was forming a wedge, except it was a different kind. It was one that was made up of resistance at the top, hits a level and it can't get past it, and higher lows. Look at the breakdown, okay? Once you see a pattern shift, right, like that, or like the other one that I showed you, well, it was that one. There's your pattern, and there's the shift. It means something, people. It means something. So in the meantime, pulling up what the insiders of Facebook has been doing, because there's been a lot of talk about, well, Mark Zuckerberg got out at a high and stuff like that. He's on a program selling. You can go into the NASDAQ. You'll have the link. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to look at the buying and the selling. And Lord knows, we've looked at a lot of things, and I'm going to show you a bunch more here in just a minute. It's pretty equal there. So what that tells me is that they were not anticipating anything nasty, that the stock shares were actually used in the normal course of compensation. And I don't really see any ridiculous buy-sell ratio like we've seen, and I'm going to show you again in just a couple of minutes, in most other places. So I think they were blindsided by this. I think they weren't paying attention since 2014. They didn't do anything to protect our data. I mean, it's shocker. And they, but I love this one. I really do. In a pot calling the kettle black moment, the Wells Fargo analyst came out and said, oh, this episode appears to be likely to create another black eye. Well, actually, the only thing that really matters to Wall Street is not necessarily the black eyes, but the reaction to the stock. Okay? Facebook has 95% of the young adult audience. So I'm not even sure how much they're paying attention to the Facebook scandal. on that, or that data breach or selling your data, but it really has had an impact on all of the big data centers. So here's Apple, Google, let's see, which one is this? Snap, and Twitter, okay? And you can see that directionally, they all pretty much look the same. You don't have to put it back up. All pretty much look the same as Facebook. But you can also see in these cases, like look at insider selling in Apple. And here it is in Snap, okay? So you can actually see what's been going on in this universe. And really, we've got some wedges, we've got some different things happening, but this does not look good. And you've got to keep in mind that big tech was definitely part of what was pushing the markets up, the price of the big tech. So if we're losing support of that sector, and we've also seen, you know, over the weeks, how much big tech has been selling out, okay? But you've got some problems in here where if big techs can't support the market and the individuals aren't supporting the markets and the markets are breaking down right at the same time that global central banks say that they're backing away from the market, you know, you might have a bit of more of a problem keeping these markets floating. I am not saying that they can't pull something out of their to do so. So time is going to tell on that. At this moment, they don't seem to be panicked enough to do anything about it. They're hell-bent on raising their interest rates. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to curse. But anyway, they're really, central bankers, especially in this country, are really keen on raising that interest rate so they can lower it into the next crisis. Though raising the interest rates can very well create that next crisis, but interest rates have backed off and flattened out again. That's another story for another day. But now I'd really like to show you why I think we're really having all of these issues. Because it's not just about the data breach that they sold this data that they weren't supposed to sell on, you know, 50 million Americans or 50 million people that did not give permission to do so. You did not sign that disclaimer in the beginning. But the real issue is the power that these tech giants have. You know, specifically Apple, Facebook, Google, okay? Because the question is, who owns the internet? Their whole setup is to gather data. That's become the new cash crop. Then they can sell that data for advertising or, you know, what's happening now in the Russian campaign, etc. Okay, so it's data. And you and me, we're the crop because we volunteer our data and we give it to them for free. But that could be changing now because of how powerful these companies have gotten. This graph here shows you that there are only 2 cities. Now, this was from May 23rd of 2017. So it's almost a year old. So it might not be exactly true anymore. But you can see here it was Apple and Google. Yep. Apple and Google are starred and they're also in orange. There are only 2 cities in this country that generate greater income, tax revenue, fines, fees, those kinds of things, than Google and Apple. And that's Manhattan and Los Angeles. And it might not be true with Los Angeles anymore. You realize the power that they can wield? They have an awful lot of money to lobby to make sure that the laws support what they want. And that's exactly what they've been doing over this many periods of time. This playing field is not level. These companies can annihilate smaller companies. But then you also have Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook, and you can see where all those stars are, that earn more revenue than most cities and even than many countries. Do you realize this? And what that really does is it threatens their sovereignty. Apple's market cap is just, well, let's see, puts it as the 17th most valuable country in the world. There are 196 countries in the world. 17th most valuable country in the world. And then, let's see, Google would rank as the 19th most valuable country in the world, their market cap. Amazon is the 25th biggest out of 197. And part of this, and their very deep pockets, is really how they get a lot of what they want, and why we've talked about corporate sovereignty, because frankly, they are as powerful as many governments. Well, we've also talked about this in terms of cryptocurrencies, where people think that they can just go over, into the cryptocurrencies and be outside of the system, and that, I don't know, the central banks will say, well, yeah, we've had a really good long run, but that's okay, and we've been seeing that too. Well, if they're feeling really as if these companies are taking over more and more control, as long as they lobby and line the individual politicians' pockets, well, yeah, they can get away with an awful lot. But at some point, when they get too powerful, governments are going to push back. And that's really what we're starting to see. After all this time, I mean, keep in mind, Amazon's whole business profile was, or strategy, was to not make money. And also, they did not have to charge taxes, right? And they spent a lot of money in lobbying, and there's lots of laws, but you get to a point where they're so big that they actually threaten everything, and the government's going to step in with regulations and also with taxes, because all of these loopholes, the regulations in the tax system has not kept pace with the new technological order. And I really want you to keep in mind how much more rapidly that has grown since the crisis, because for them, it's kind of interesting listening to a lot of these guys that were on for the Bear Stearns anniversary. And part of it was that the central bankers and the bankers did not think that there was a problem with the products, but it was a problem with the technology. It's a problem that everything is just not real. And it's super overvalued for not being real. But these companies have become monopolies, where you've got Google, let's see, Google, 89% of all searches. Facebook, 95% of all young adults on the internet. Amazon, 75% of electronic book sales. Go try and find a bookstore these days. It's a pretty challenging thing to do. I'm not saying there are none, but there are not nearly as many as they used to be. Google and Facebook together, 63% of the online ad revenues. Those are either monopolies or duopolies. Make no mistake about it. They are powerful. So part of what we're seeing in this breakdown is that global governments are going, okay, we're going to put in new regulations. We're going to tax this. We're going to make some changes here. And of course, Wall Street doesn't like those changes. They like to know exactly what's going to happen so that they can control everything around it. But even that is not the biggest problem in my personal opinion. The biggest problem is government getting every bit of information held in an easily accessible place. So this top piece is out of a study that they did in 2014 under Obama's White House. And they talk about what are the sources of big data, because everybody knows that Wall Street and Washington are, hand in hand and scratching each other's back. So the sources of big data, this is just a partial source, includes the web, social media, mobile applications, state taxes and local taxes, commercial databases, so you get an education, you go to the doctor. So this is really all of this big data and information on each individual. Look, you can't go through an intersection without facial recognition software, sensors in the road. I mean, it is not quite full surveillance, but it's getting to be full surveillance. And look, if it's done, I mean, I can see the good in it if it's done for good, but can you really trust Washington politicians to put your best interest first? Is that really what they've shown you? I'm sure there are some that certainly do that, but what comes out of Washington is typically not in your best interest first. It's in special interest groups first. You think they're not spying on you? Well, just recently, let's see, what's the date of this? Okay, January 19th of 2018, Trump signs bill renewing the NSA, who also did the white paper on the cryptocurrencies, Internet Surveillance Program. And for those of you that still insist that cryptocurrencies are out of the system, here was this little piece in CoinDex. Snowden leaks suggest NSA is extensively tracking Bitcoin users. Now, it's really also funny that I put this together 2 days ago, and then one of our lovely listeners, and I think also a client, Tom, sent us a link to a Yahoo piece where Warren Buffett, so you don't see this up on the screen because I just printed this off right before we were doing this, but Warren Buffett is telling his Berkshire owners to be prepared for, what does he say here? Shareholders, be prepared to lose half your money. So here's Warren, who is a huge proponent, obviously, of the stock market, and has said that gold doesn't pay interest. It's just an old relic. What do you need it for? I got to tell you, either his father's rolling over in his grave, or he doesn't really believe what's coming out of his mouth. Because Warren Buffett's father was the Ron Paul of the day. And he fought hard to get our dollars redeemable, the citizens, to have the ability to redeem those dollars into good money gold. And I don't usually read stuff to you, but I'm going to read this because I really want to hammer this home. Human freedom rests on gold redeemable money. And he asks the question, is there a connection between human freedom and a gold redeemable money? At first glance, it would seem that money belongs to the world of economics and human freedom to the political sphere. But when you recall that one of the first moves by Lenin, Mussolini, and Hitler was to outlaw individual ownership of gold, you begin to sense that there you have the link to this, read it. We disallowed that in 33. We've allowed that again. Take advantage of it. It is legal to buy all the gold that you want. No limitations. But keep in mind that we took that right away from the population as we were shifted into that fiat money system, and we didn't understand what was happening. If they get everything and they get us to hold all of our title to all of our assets on blockchain, So here's every bit of your information in one big string line. They don't even have to go multiple places to get this information. That's a button push. That's not okay with me. I'm not saying that I'm going to have a choice. But if people really know this, then maybe we have a choice in what this next system looks like, because we have to reset the system. It's based on never-ending compounding debt, and we can't pay the debt that's there in such a big measure that now you're seeing countries talk about how much the interest on that debt is eating up their revenues. That's your taxes and any fees and fines and all of that stuff. And you know that I always tell you too, those that understand money own gold. But who knows more about the Federal Reserve than Ron Paul? I wish he was still in our political system, but he got involved in politics after Nixon took us off the gold standard, which means handed over the power of inflation to the central banks, who only know debt and leverage. And their job is to support the banks. That's when he became political and got involved in the system. While he was there, he was the congressman. Okay, so you did not pick up the new slide. I'm sorry, we'll be posting this on there. But he's the congressman from Texas from 1977 to 2013. He was the chairman of the Subcommittee on Domestic Monetary Policy and Technology. He served in the House Banking Committee. He was in the Subcommittee on the International Monetary Policy and Trade, and he founded the Foundation of Rational Economics. And he also introduced the bill, Audit the Fed. Ron Paul only buys old numismatic coins. And there are links there. You can hear him say it. I even put 2 in there, so you've got him saying it earlier and you've got him saying it pretty recently. He says it all the time. He does not deny it. Who knows more about the Fed than Ron Paul? And of course, you know, I do not buy any new coins. I do not buy any new bullion coins. A good way to know if the government still classifies what they really classify as a true numismatic or collectible, look at what you can put in your IRA. Because if you can put it in your IRA, it's very easy for them to take, because you don't really have control over that. So keep that in mind. Personally, I'm not comfortable with Wall Street controlling my wealth because I know too much. I've been in it for, on some level, my whole life. So I prefer at this juncture, especially with what's happening in these markets. Where is it? This is a big deal, people. This is a very, very, very big deal. So I'd like to just kind of keep in mind that if you have stuff in the market, I hope at the minimum that it's actually protected, that it's really diversified, because people think they're diversified because they have a whole bunch of mutual funds, or they have a whole bunch of ETFs, or maybe they have stocks, or maybe they have bonds, but those are all fiat money products. You're not diversified. You're not diversified if everything you hold is intangible. So at the minimum, you need a level to protect whatever you're going to choose to keep inside of the system, so that when you lose access to it, which is what I think is going to happen, then you have access here. And Venezuela showed us what a reset looks like overnight. Over 2,200 times the spot price of gold jumped. I'm going to this coming Saturday, the X22 report interview that I did with Dave is going to air. And we had a really interesting debate on cryptos versus not cryptos. I get that that's the direction that we're going. And, you know, if that's our tool of barter, then that's what I'm going to have to deal with. But You want to listen to it. It was really, really an interesting, it was fun. It was fun because it's always nice when somebody doesn't necessarily agree with what I have to say. Then you can have an honest debate, and I think it's something that everybody needs to have. So that's coming out on Saturday morning. I did just do an interview with Jason Burdick over at Wall Street for Main Street, and very, very smart guy. That should be airing either tonight or tomorrow, but check with Megan because she's really good with the social media, so you can find us on Twitter and Facebook, and of course, we're about to do an On the Road with Lynette, and I'm really starting to get very excited about it because I'm also going to get to do a live coffee with Lynette with Gerald Salente, but I'm going to be in my hometown in Kingston, and across the river in Poughkeepsie is where the live event is going to be. Seats are starting to fill up pretty fast, so if this is something that you'd like to attend, and I'd love to see you there, then, you know, make sure that you get your seats. And the tickets are already on sale. I think the link is below. And if you have any questions, just send it to megant@itmtrading.com or give us a call, and you can ask for Megan, and she'll walk you through that on the phone. So I think that that's about it for today. Is that it?
Yep.
Okie dokie. So everybody, please be safe out there. Please pay attention to this. It's a big deal. Share this. Share this with everybody. I don't know that this is it, but this is going to trigger a lot of algorithms. It's going to trigger a lot of computers. So until tomorrow, be safe out there. Bye-bye.